Welcome to the Sales Titans podcast, the show where we break down the strategies and secrets of top performing sales professionals. I'm your host, Carlos. I'm the founder at Sales Titans and Titan SDR. Our guest today is Stuart Taylor. He's a sales coach, co-author of the best seller in Amazon, Problem Prospecting. Stu is someone who has coached thousands of SDRs and account executives at brands like Zoom, Google, and HubSpot. And here's what makes Stuart different from most trainers. He's still in the trenches. He still carries a quota. He still picks up the phone. I love it. If you have ever struggled to know what to say in the first 10 seconds of a cold call, this conversation is the one you have been waiting for. Welcome, Stu. Really glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Stu, could you walk us through a great cold call opener? What's the prospect's brain doing in those first 5 to 10 seconds?
Yeah, so it's critically important because obviously you only get that first impression or else the call ends very quickly. So for me, the cold call opener is the most important part so you can get into the conversation. But it's not just a prospect's brain, it's anybody's brain. So anybody who's listening, put yourself in your prospect's shoes. You pick up the phone, there's questions going through your head. Who is it? What do they want? Why are they calling me? I always think, do I know this person? Is it actually a customer or is it a prospect or is it somebody I know that I haven't saved their number by accident? So you've got a lot of questions going through your head. Often you've got a million things going on as well. You're trying to get back to that report you were doing. You've got the kids. There's various different things happening. So there's a lot going on. And as salespeople, we need to break through that noise to get the attention of the prospect. So there's a certain, it's not a script, it's more of a framework that I like to follow for the openings of cold call. And I've done this for over 10 years now, and it still works today, so I've never fixed it. The opening to my cold call is, hey, Carlos, this is Stu calling from whatever company. We've never actually spoken before. Can I take 35 seconds to tell you why I've chosen to call you today? And I can say that in my sleep. I've said it for years and years and years, but it also answers a lot of the questions. So it's telling the prospect who I am, where I'm calling from, the fact that we've never actually spoken before. I'm telling them what I want, how long I want, but I'm also trying to pique their curiosity a little bit to insinuate that there's a specific reason why I've chosen to call them this morning. And then I remain quiet. And often, it's worked when you hear some silence because the prospect's trying to take it all in and they come back with, yeah, go on then. And that's when that's worked. But it's well chosen because a lot of the questions prospects will ask you is, who are you? Do I know who you are? Where are you calling from? And we just disarm those questions before the prospect can throw them at you by telling them who you are, where you're calling from, and what you want. And it just makes the opening to the cold call much easier.
It's good to hear these words, Stu, because after several years making cold calling, I came more or less with the same conclusion. I think it's related to something psychological. If we break down this opener, we will see that, as you said, we are saying who we are. But for me, the most important point here is that first we're acknowledging that we are calling out of the blue. So we are telling them openly that they were not expecting our call, right? And also we are asking for permission. And for me, as you said, the script is not as relevant as, for example, the tone, the confidence, or the silences that you put in your sentences. In fact, my opener is quite similar, right? I say the same like, Stu, they say yes. I say, this is Carlos calling from XYZ. Then I shut up for a second. And before they start saying, who are you or why are you calling? I start saying, I know that you weren't expecting my call. Did I catch you with 30 seconds to give you more context about it? That's it, because at that point, my experience says that if they say, because of curiosity, yes, go ahead, which happens 90% of the times with this opener, then they have given you the chance to have the conversation. What I tell to my team always is that you don't have to obsess on winning the meeting, obsessed on winning the conversation, right? If we break down this opener, there are different phases on the opener, and our duty is to, let's say, optimize each of the phases, and each phase is a few seconds, right? So I'm glad that we came out with the same opener, more or less. Stu, how do you teach reps to think about relevance as an ethical obligation, not just a tactic?
It's interesting, right? Isn't it? And I think, relevance is super important now and getting more so than ever, especially not necessarily so much on cold calling. So I think cold calling can still cut through the noise and work without, specific relevance. But for all the methods like email and things, I think if you haven't got relevance, or you haven't got, intent or a reason for reaching out, then it's almost pointless doing it now. And I think there's a fine line between using relevance and personalization, but not going too far. But I'm always a big believer that there should be a specific reason why you've picked up the phone to that person, right? Or else you're just doing spray and pray and you're just ringing everyone and hoping. And that's what you've got to get across in that call. That there's a specific reason why I've called you today, Carlos, and I want to get that across, whatever that might be.
Exactly. I will say in that regard that at least the person you are calling to, they have to fit in a ICP criteria. This will be the lowest level of relevancy, right? But at least this is showing that they could be interested based on your past experience outreaching the same kind of people in the past that shown you that there is at least a chance of converting, right? And then you can, I will say, increase this level of relevancy with trigger events, whatever. But at least, as you said, if you don't take care of that, let's say, database creation in those terms, you end up making a spray and pray. You're right. Stu, how much do you think in the cold call is verbal versus non-verbal? We were saying before that tone, confidence, silence are important, right?
They are definitely. And, I think what you say is also got to be authentic to yourself. So there's no point somebody just listening to my call open and then repeating that, because that won't sound natural. That won't sound in their own words, in their own language. So I think you've got to find your own way. In what's not said, that is obviously important, and using the power of silence and things is equally important. But also, there's a lot of things you could do as a cold caller that had nothing to do with the actual technique. It's the positivity. It's I've always been a fan of things like standing up when you dial if you can. If I get into a really good conversation, you'll see me walking around and doing laps of the office. And there's also that positive mindset. And the big thing that I try to help everybody with is focus on the things you can control, because cold calling can be a really difficult thing to do. And we can all make a lot of cold calls and not get the success that we deserve. We can do all the right things and not get the results. So I always teach everyone to try and focus on the inputs, look at the things that are within your control and make sure you execute them. So it's really important that you know your numbers. So if you know you need to make 20 dials to have one conversation and you need to have 2 conversations to book one meeting, you know what your expectations are. You can kind of re-engineer that process. There's so many different things that go into it. It's not just the actual conversation on the phone to being a good cold caller. And a lot of the time people kind of overemphasize what pattern interrupt you should use. Should you use a permission-based opener? Should you do this? When the truth is just making the calls, finding out what works and getting feedback, and then making your own version and being authentic is way more important than most of the other things that people spend a lot of time debating on LinkedIn and the like.
Absolutely. I will say that the magic of cold calling is that the market gives you answers, right? And you can test, you can experiment and give and receive feedback from the market and iterate very fast, right? When you send an email and they don't answer you, you don't know why. But when you
Exactly.
are in a conversation, if they tell you they are not interested, you can ask why, right? And this gives you speed. Stu, let's do a lightning round of questions, fast answers. Best book you have ever read on sales, and you can tell yours.
Yeah, I'm not going to say mine. I wouldn't say that anyway, because I'm sure there are a lot of far better. Jeb Blunt's Fanatical Prospecting, that was a real game changer for me. It was an excellent book, and I got a lot of value from that.
Good one. Multi-channeling or not?
Yes.
Okay, which channels?
As many as you can, all of them. The most successful ones for me are still cold calling by a long yard, but things like LinkedIn voice notes, LinkedIn videos are probably second performers. I think email still has its place, but it's increasingly less effective. But if you can write a good email with intent, with relevance, and they still do cut through the noise. It's not on us to judge where our prospects will respond. Some prospects will never answer their phone, but they might respond to an email or a LinkedIn message. So you need to cover all bases in the hope that you can reach that prospect on a channel that they are, willing to respond to you on.
And now a very hot one, Stu. Will AI replace cold callers?
I think inevitably, if it keeps going the way it's going, yes, but I think that's a long way off. So maybe I'm ducking out with that question a little bit. I don't think it's in the near future, and I think the challenge it has is one big part of sales is trust, and I think the only time AI will replace humans in selling is if AI is selling to AI. Because I don't know if humans would actually end up trusting that or not. And that might be a place in the future. I don't know. And, the rate it's going at, I'm sure it will. But I think however good AI gets, I don't know if humans will ever trust it enough to have a sales conversation with it. So I'm maybe sitting on the fence a little bit with that one, Carlos. But yeah, that's my take on things.
Yeah, I will say that maybe in the short term for services that cost a little money, I mean, I don't care to buy a $20 product per month subscription from an AI, but if I have to pay like 10K per year for a service, I need to know who to blame or which head I have to cut if it's not working properly, right? So yeah, I agree on that. And last one, Stu, one tip for someone terrified of making that first call today.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest tip I can give is not really a tip, right? But it's an understanding, right? And I think what you need to understand is that everybody has cold call anxiety, right? It doesn't matter if somebody who's an expert like yourself, Carlos, who's been doing it for a number of years, or it's somebody who's brand new. It's an unnatural thing to do to ring somebody and interrupt them in the middle of their day. So I think firstly, understanding that everybody has some element of cold call anxiety. I've been making cold calls this morning, and the first few of the day are always make me anxious. And I think everybody has that. So I think understanding that first, that you're not alone, you're not strange in that you get anxiety from this, it's totally normal, I think is the first thing. The second thing is trying to reframe what you're trying to do. And you said it earlier, right? We're not trying to book a meeting. We're not trying to sell a product, right? We're trying to start a conversation. And hopefully you're selling a good product you believe in, and you're trying to see if you can help people. So reframing the conversation, when I'm trying to start a conversation to see if I can help someone, helps me to feel more comfortable when I'm making cold calls.
Thanks for that, Stu. What you have just given our listeners is rare, not motivation, not a mindset hack, but the actual mechanics of why the first 10 seconds of a cold call determines everything that follows and what to do about it, of course. So that's the kind of thing that changes how a rep shows up on a Monday morning. And for our listeners, if this episode gave you something, follow us on YouTube or LinkedIn because we are uploading new episodes every month. And if you want to test a cold calling campaign in 48 hours with vetted callers who understand everything Stu and I talk about today, visit titansdr.io. Start with 1 hour a day, see it working in 72 hours, no agency lock-in, no guessing. That's all for this time. Until next time, sell or die. Thanks, Stu.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.